Hello, everyone. I'm Brandon,
And I'm Cody.
and welcome to another episode of the Modern Misfits podcast, a podcast, oddly enough, about ancient aliens. So, Cody, how do you feel episode 3 so far?
Um, ooh, complicated.
um, so, Cody, we spent the last 2 episodes talking about vibrating aliens with blue balls and swinging rock penises, but today we talk about not the aliens in the skies above us, but the aliens below the surface of the earth. And boy, howdy, does this episode take some weird fucking places.
I think I asked this before. Is this not just mole people?
We don't talk about mole people. Oddly enough, this is not the episode where they talk about mole people. And I should say, for clarification's note, that this is not episode 3 of Ancient Aliens. This is technically episode 4 of season 2, but it's not like this matters in the grand scheme of things because these episodes aren't connected in the first place. So fuck it. The show doesn't want to work with me. I won't work with the show.
I just want to point out that you didn't say they don't talk about mole people. You just said this isn't the episode where they talk about mole people. I just wanted to make that clear.
I cannot confirm nor deny whether or not they talk about mole people in any of the seasons of Ancient Aliens, but we've got 18 seasons. They've got time.
I can't help but notice that you have a very nice gun hanging on the wall that says Chekhov that's kind of written in the side of it. Anyway.
Something 3-act structure. But let's start off this first act by listening to the thesis of the episode.
For centuries, people have told tales of caves and tunnels deep inside the earth. Subterranean passageways that lead to lands of gods and monsters. But is there a surprising truth behind these legends?
I have stood in front of drawings on the rocks and wondered, am I looking at the extraterrestrial biological entity?
Could there really be mysterious places far beneath our feet? Places whose origins might not be of this earth.
There were certain aspects of the caves for which geology could not provide an answer.
In mythologies, they talked about holes in the ground, and we found some holes in the ground, therefore it's true.
Yeah, that you're gonna find out that's gonna be a running theme throughout this entire fucking episode.
Cool. I can't wait.
The first place this show takes us is the Cappadocia region of Turkey and the underground labyrinth that is Derinkuyu.
Bordered on the north by the Black Sea and by the Taurus Mountains to the south, lies Cappadocia in central Turkey. Here, wind and water have sculpted strange shapes out of the soft volcanic rock. Rock which ancient peoples once turned into small primitive dwellings. In more recent years, the site has seen the construction of more modern structures. But in 1963, a simple home renovation in the town of Derinkuyu led to an extraordinary discovery when a cave wall was opened, revealing a passageway to an underground city thousands of years old and more than 280 feet deep.
So, for context, the Cappadocia region is located in the central Anatolian plateau, with sedimentary rocks and volcanic deposits that have eroded in honestly unique conical kind of formations. The softness of this material have allowed the people there to carve inhabitable structures within the surface of the rock. One of the largest of these sites is Derinkuyu, which is an underground complex of 18 floors and a depth of 85 meters. That's really fucking far. The city was discovered in 1963 and opened to visitors in 1969.
Nice.
The origins of this place is unknown, but construction probably started around the 8th century BCE and expanded in the 5th and 10th centuries AD. We're not exactly sure who built them, but the two most likely candidates are the Hittites or the Phrygians, a Bronze Age culture related to the Greeks. This structure is actually really cool and is connected to this larger web of underground structures. And there are about 40 subterranean settlements in the area. And the city itself could accommodate between 20,000 and 50,000 people. Each floor could be closed off separately in case of attack. And these underground cities held amenities such as wine, oil presses, stables, storage rooms, and chapels. But as always, you and I both know that Ancient Aliens is going to make this weird somehow.
I don't know what you're talking about. We haven't already done 2 episodes where we've seen things get weird.
Well, let's see how weird this clip goes.
Oh, Darren Kuyu would have been a massive undertaking for anyone, even in modern times, with modern equipment. But in those days, it would have been stupendous. Equal to the pyramids. At Darren Kuyu, because of the softness of the stone, you had to be very careful that you provided enough pillar strength to support the floors above. Otherwise, you'd have catastrophic cave-ins. Surprisingly, there's no evidence of any catastrophic cave-ins, so they were apparently extremely clever and knew their material. We're talking deep antiquity. It is mind-boggling to understand how they could have done this. Perhaps they had help from some other civilization.
I am a dwarf and I'm digging a hole. Diggy diggy hole. Sorry. Please stop for a second.
So you see where this show kind of contradicts itself. They say that, oh, they knew what they were doing. They knew their material. But then they needed help from another civilization because they couldn't possibly have done it themselves.
Well, no, like, clearly, otherwise, you would have seen evidence of them messing up and there being catastrophic something, whatever they said.
Right. Something. Don't worry about it, bro. Trust us.
There's no evidence to stop us.
So in this next clip, they actually start off, oddly enough, by stating facts, but then jumps off the metaphorical cliff with a bunch of bullshit.
According to many archaeologists and scholars, Darren Kuyu was most likely intended to serve as a temporary shelter from invasion. Built around 800 BC by the Phrygians, a Bronze Age people related to the Trojans. Others believe it was built by the Hittites, a warrior people mentioned in the Bible who flourished hundreds of years earlier. But could the underground city be even older? According to ancient astronaut theorists, it is.
And again, I hate to keep harping on this particular point, but they gotta mention the Bible in there somewhere. They gotta make sure that you know that everything in the Bible is true. Because, there aren't cultures that have had repeated interactions with the Hittites. Hey, ancient Egypt, what's up?
Well, no, you see, everything in ancient society was just self-contained.
So here's an interesting note. The first peace treaty ever signed by two countries, by the Hittites and the Egyptians, was signed in 1258 BCE. Today, scholars agree that during the 7th century BC, different groups or schools of authors wrote down what we know today as the Bible. At some point, likely during the 1st century BC, Old Testament was put together in what we know it as today. Similarly, the New Testament and the Gospels were written from oral tradition that was passed down from one generation to another before it was written down, probably in the 1st century AD. My point is not to shit all over the Bible all the time. My point is that using the Bible as a historical document in this way oversimplifies the historical record and pushes the narrative of the show. It's just sloppy stuff.
And as has been pointed out in previous episodes, it's not as though you get nearly as much representation from other sources or other texts as much as we do this one specific book.
Right. And just so that way, like, no one decides to say, well, you didn't actually read the book. Yes, the Hittites were in fact mentioned in the Bible, specifically the books of Exodus, Second Chronicles, Deuteronomy, First and Second Kings, the book of Joshua, Nehemiah, Ezra, and Judges. Yes, I read my Bible during Sunday school. Might be why I don't use it as a historical document.
Citation needed.
Speaking of citation needed, so there's actually a less popular theory about Derinkuyu that the Zoroastrians built it. The Zoroastrians were a religious group that existed in ancient Persia, which is modern-day Iran. But listen to how they described why the Zoroastrians built the tunnels.
According to the sacred texts, Yima built a multi-level underground city to protect a select group of people and animals, not from a flood, but from a global ice age. The Vendidad calls this the evil winters. According to many mainstream climatologists, the last ice age peaked around 18,000 years ago and ended around 10,000 BC. Is it possible that Derinkuyu was built as a refuge from a devastating global winter?
I mean, maybe. I'm guessing you have some follow-up information to help clarify that.
But also, like, first off, Evil Winters, that's my new band name.
Was that like the alternate name for the White Walkers?
I guess. But I do have this little thing from the Zoroastrian Avesta, which is one of their sacred books. It only contains one passage about an underground city. There's one passage, nothing else. There's no archaeological evidence to state that they built the city at all.
So this is kind of an instance of we have this one sort of piece of evidence and we're extrapolating from it.
Exactly. And you could even be hard pressed to even call it evidence because it's vague enough.
I'm sorry, I realize that it's hard to really pick up on the air quotes in this audio medium.
So this next clip, oddly enough, this is the one that made me mad.
Oh, this one is the one that made you mad.
Since you cannot carbon date stone, it's anybody's guess how old Derinkuyu really is. And my question is, if we have a Zoroastrian story that's very similar, could it be that both that place and Derinkuyu are much, much older than what we've believed so far?
But if Derinkuyu is, in fact, the underground city that Ahura Mazda told his followers to build, could there be a stunning truth behind the legend?
Can you not carbon date rocks?
So no, you actually can't carbon date. So you can't carbon date rocks. The reason for that is carbon dating only works for organic material, for organic objects younger than 50,000 years. And most rocks that interest scientists are much older than that. However, you can actually date rocks with elements of a longer half-lives, such as potassium-40 decaying into argon, which has a half-life of 1.26 billion years. There's beryllium-10 decaying into boron, which has a half-life of 1.52 billion years. Is this pedantic? Sure. But, Giorgio, you can fucking date rocks.
So it's not that you can't date rocks, it's just you can't date rocks past a certain point.
Exactly. But you know what you can carbon date? The human artifacts like the ones left at the site, which you might use to date the construction of the location instead of, I don't know, dating rocks that are possibly billions of years old.
We can't date the rocks, but we got this guy. Nah, that'll never work.
It's like this show is intentionally ignoring shit to fit the narrative.
I mean, how many seasons do they have? It seems to be working.
The show goes on with the same narrative as the last episode to state that Ahura Mazda, the Zoroastrian god, is actually an alien. Like, are they just throwing darts and going, they're an alien, they're an alien, they're an alien?
The Oprah Winfrey of stating who's an alien.
See, I was thinking towards the end of like Battlestar Galactica, where they're like, you're a Cylon, you're a Cylon, and you're a Cylon.
Or in the MCU where everyone's a scroll.
Yeah, exactly. So, in this next clip, we get to talk about Ahura Mazda building the tunnels, I guess.
Several sacred texts from antiquity speak of knowledge given to mankind from extraterrestrials, but also known as gods from antiquity.
Could the sky god Ahura Mazda really have been an advanced being from another world? If so, did he provide the technology needed for his followers to build this complex labyrinth as protection from environmental disaster? Or is there possibly a more ominous reason for Darren Kuyu's existence?
More ominous reason, like he had a child with a woman that was a hideous half-bull creature, and so then he had to construct this maze-like structure.
You would think in this kind of episode they would talk about the labyrinth, but they don't, oddly enough.
I don't know if they talk about it in episode 3, that you had mentioned that this is episode 4. In episode 2, they made some weird comments about the gods matching various animals and parts together to create monsters, and so you'd think that they'd make some kind of mention to the Minotaur.
Yeah, but you're also assuming these episodes are connected in any way, shape, or form.
You know what? That is a fair point. That is truly my bad for assuming some level of quality.
So here's my question. If the aliens are preparing us for like climate disaster or whatever, which like fair enough, we're heading there, wouldn't underground cities be like the worst thing due to like rising sea levels?
Well, rising sea levels, and also like God help you if you live in either Japan or California, because the amount of earthquakes that are going to happen and just mess everything up.
That is fair. Also, if you live in the Northwest, my God, get ready for some fires.
Not wrong. Not wrong.
So it's not climate change. Apparently, the tunnels were built to defend against an alien invasion? Question mark?
The Darren Kuyu doors, they're very cleverly constructed. You can basically only open it and leverage it from the inside.
So obviously, whoever inhabited Darren Kuyu was hiding from someone or something.
According to the ancient Zoroastrian texts, Ahura Mazda soared through the sky in a divine chariot and waged war against his eternal enemy, Angra Mainyu, the demon of destruction. But could this really be, as many ancient astronaut theorists believe, a depiction of two extraterrestrial forces battling over control of the Earth and its resources?
The aerial enemies were extraterrestrials because they were the ones who had the capability of flight. They had access to those types of machines that we can read about in every single ancient culture around the world.
So we got demons now. This is the new thing we're adding to the lexicon of ancient alien. What is an alien?
Exactly. So fucking three things. One, I'm pretty sure any sufficiently advanced alien armada that was able to make its way from their planet to ours would have nukes. So what use would those tunnels be anyway?
Well, Brandon, haven't you ever seen the duck and cover videos that they used to play in like the 1950s, 1940s? You just gotta, you just gotta get under a desk or duck behind a wall or get underneath a picnic blanket, and it completely shields you from nuclear fallout.
Yeah, those would have worked such wonders. And two, there couldn't possibly be any, say, terrestrial enemies they were afraid of. No, it has to be aliens.
Right, like if you have an imagination, you can come up with other options of what it might be, not just specifically aliens.
I think calling this show having an imagination is nice. And three, they did in fact put a sci-fi space battle in a show in the History Channel, but I'm pretty sure that's the least surprising thing here. So this show decides to yank us from the Middle East and then towards the American Southwest and the creation myths of various indigenous cultures to the area.
I assume we're traveling by map, Indiana Jones style.
Exactly. Just this is copyright free Indiana Jones music.
Da 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 da. We can technically get away with it.
We're talking about our origin, and you hear the stories about us coming down from Alaska through the Bering Strait, but what we believe is we came out from the ground.
The Apaches and other Pueblo Indians, such as the Zunis and the Hopi Indians, all have this legend that they emerged from some underground world into today's world.
In some legends, the southwestern peoples went back underground for safety. The Hopi of Arizona say their ancestors escaped a deadly storm of falling stars with the help of the Snake people, who took them to shelters deep in the earth. Another Hopi legend speaks of the Ant people, who protected them from storms of fire and ice.
Oh, so we're not going to talk about fucking mole people this episode. We're going to talk about snake people and ant people.
So in a more serious note, I am going to tread a little carefully here because we are talking about indigenous people and their belief system, right? Now, if I was a betting man, the show most likely cut that indigenous speaker off after he said they came from under the underground deliberately, because there's more to the story. So what was the Hopi creation ritual? This is from The Hopi, from a series of books by American indigenous people by Nancy Bonvillain. Yes, I know the name, but let's move past that part. Nancy is a professor of anthropology and linguistics at Bard College at Simon's Rock. And in her book, she states that the Hopi believe that the world started covered in water with no dry land. However, inside the darkened earth lived deities and spirits with great knowledge. One day, the goddesses of the east and west created living things, giving them breath and language. They dwelled inside the earth, planting crops until there was discord. No, not the app.
You beat me to it.
After many quarrels, the wisest leaders among them knew they must find a way out, and the chiefs found a ladder to the surface, each of them carrying an ear of corn. The people then traveled in each of the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, to find a good place to plant their corn. So you see how the Hopi legend is just a bit more complicated than that. Even I had to simplify quite a bit.
So what you're saying is that Ancient Aliens is being irresponsible with their rendition of the beliefs of these people.
I just think they're just plain irresponsible, but in this instance, yes.
Just assume that, and you'll be wrong, or you'll be correct 90% of the time.
Exactly. Now, this is where the show gets a little weird.
The Hopi Indians survived cataclysms by living in this underground world with the ant people for a certain period of time, and then eventually they emerged from the underground world back into the surface world.
Ant people. Snake people. Could these stories be based on ancestral tales of people actually living underground? Possibly during the last ice age. Or could the ancestors of today's southwestern tribes have taken refuge in subsurface dwellings similar to the underground city of Derinkuyu in Turkey?
Ancestors. You missed a perfect opportunity there.
So I made sure to search the book that I just described earlier. I couldn't find anything that talks about an ice age or anything. However, when Childress, one of the people speaking in that clip, talks about the Hopi living with the snake people or the ant people. Well, here's the thing about that. Hopi clans are named for a bunch of stuff. They're named for birds, foods, natural substance, objects. So yes, there is a snake clan. There is a bird clan.
Okay, so just clarification, and I think this goes back to the show being irresponsible. I'm getting the feeling that even in the visuals that they add on the show, that there is absolutely no indication of this. They're just saying snake people and ant people. So then it's like, oh, what if they were aliens that looked like ants and snakes?
Yeah, did I mention this show is racist?
I mean, I'm starting to get a feeling about that.
So, unfortunately, the show goes full tilt boogie on this trope in this next clip.
I have stood in front of what are called the ant people and some of the very strange, large-eyed drawings on the rocks and wondered, am I looking at Native American interpretation of what today is called an extraterrestrial biological entity?
If extraterrestrials were here in the remote past, there are multiple species out there. Is it possible that they might have looked lizard-like and ant-like? And the answer is yes.
What? What?
Did I mention this show is racist? Oh my god, like, seriously?
I was so confused when we first started because the first person speaking, she made a comment about, I stood in front of the ant people, and I was immediately thinking she meant, oh no, I've seen ant people. and then she said, oh, in a mural. And then I thought, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then they just kept going. It's like, what if they were actually ant people? And I was back to thinking, what? What are you talking about?
Finally, the show has broken Cody.
I don't know about broken, but there's some chipping involved.
So, of course, this show can't go on without starting some sort of fucking conspiracy. So, let me start the clip.
The Jicarilla Apache Reservation is located next to the small town of Dulce, nestled in the shadow of the over 9,000-foot-high Archuleta Mesa.
It is from this mesa and mountain that people claim they have seen UFOs flying out of the mountain.
It was a spaceship we saw right there. And it was big, like maybe the size of a football field. And then we seen this dome on top that was all glassed in. And then my husband was looking at it with the binoculars, and he saw two small people. Well, we don't know what it is. If we stayed here and they came down, I don't know what they would have done to us.
Citation needed?
Yeah, like, I'm not gonna tell this woman what she did or didn't see. Like, I seen some weird shit in the sky too, but that doesn't mean it's aliens.
I mean, there's just a lot there.
Yeah, so this next clip is where we actually get to the conspiracy.
The amount of military traffic over Dulce, the unmarked helicopters, the black helicopters, the heavy-duty Chinooks, all these helicopters spend a lot more time in Dulce than they should if nothing were going on here. Among the stories that we've heard from the Hickory Apache is that they discovered vents actually right here on the mesa.
A while back, when my brother was still alive, we used to come up here in the back, and he showed us the shaft, and that thing was bigger than me. But we walked in, and I didn't want to go any further.
The vents were here maybe 25 years ago. You'd hear strange noises, groans, sighs, human groans. And this led a lot of credence to stories that human beings were being vivisected, experimented on. And thus the legend of strange creatures and strange noises coming out of this mesa grew and expanded.
My brother showed me the shaft. It was bigger than me. And then we heard these moans and sighs coming from down the hole.
So oh my god, the audio is gonna be fun to edit today. So a couple things. One, talking from personal experience, most helicopters are black. That's just how they're painted. And two, like, we live near a military base with a lot of military aircraft. I'll see like Blackhawks, Apaches, and A-10s and B-2s all the freaking time, right? Hell, just this morning, I believe, I saw a group of 4 Blackhawks, which are like taxi helicopters, essentially. They're meant to carry troops, flying in formation as I was driving to work. But apparently that means aliens.
Can't be, practicing their flying skills or anything like that. Making sure everything works.
Yeah, they totally don't have like a set amount of hours that they have to have behind the stick in order to keep their pilot's license. Can't possibly be that reason. Also, to note on more pedantic shit, there are 4 military installations in New Mexico, not accounting like National Guard armories. That's a whole separate issue. And this is from militarybases.us. There is Kirtland Air Force Base, which is the 6th largest Air Force installation, which is near Albuquerque in Bernalillo. Get your Bugs Bunny jokes out now.
So yeah, I was thinking more the Weird Al Yankovic song. Look it up, it's good stuff.
There's also Cannon Air Force Base, which sits near Clovis. Holloman Air Force Base near Otero County, which is a home to the largest and fastest test track. White Sands Missile Range, and finally, the Naval Air Warfare Center Weapons the Naval Air Warfare Center Weapons Division, second try. Which, as you can imagine, does live fire testing and recovery of missiles, guns, and rocket systems. So, as you might imagine, all the aircraft flying around, that's because there's like 3 Air Force bases in the state alone.
Right. So it's not necessarily uncommon to see a hovering set of lights in the sky because that what helicopter do.
Yeah. And also, I would like to know what this person judges how much military activity is an unusual amount in heavy air quotes.
Being presumably non-military.
Well, he does have a PhD from what his credentials said, but I don't know if this person is military or former military. But like, I don't know, maybe they're just doing a training exercise. Those happen all the time. And also, no, they don't show the vents. Of course not.
404 footage not found. And just to update our lore so far. So we have aliens that rise up out of Lake Titicaca, vibrating with blue balls, and now with massive shafts.
Exactly. This will get much longer. Nice. As it goes on. And again, we are adults and professionals.
That's what it says on the business card.
Exactly. Oh, that'd be dope to give like freaking professional like business cards and just have it as Modern Misfits Pod on the back. We are professionals. Here's our Twitter handle.
Well, I mean, if we get enough, or if we get big enough, then we can maybe look into making those.
Exactly, right? And so the show whips us up and takes us to Ecuador because I'm trying to find a different synonym for whiplash, and the tale of the Cueva de los Tallos and the so-called treasure of Father Carlo Crespi.
Father Carlo Crespi, he was loved by the Indians. He helped them without asking for money, and the Indians made them some presents.
But what was unique about the presents or gifts given to Father Crespi was that they often took the form of elaborately carved artifacts, some made of gold or other precious metals. Often these objects featured elaborate carvings and symbols, not known to be associated with the Shuar culture. In his 1973 book, Gold of the Gods, ancient astronaut theorist Eric von Daniken wrote of Father Crespi's incredible collection, which he believed to come from the Cave of Tallos, and which were, in his opinion, treasures from an unknown and highly advanced culture.
Unfortunately, according to thesaurus.com, there do not seem to be any synonyms for whiplash. I am very sorry.
So let's give this clip some context. The Cave of Tallos is a real cave located in the Rio Coangas in Ecuador, and it has been used for centuries by the indigenous Shuar people. The cave has seen explorers, including the astronaut Neil Armstrong and a group of Mormons attempting to find archaeological proof of their beliefs. You might be surprised that they did not find such proof in Ecuador.
I don't know if surprise would be the word I'm looking for.
So, on that treasure by Father Crespi, that was actually looked at by magician and debunker James Randi. You probably know James Randi from that TED Talk he gave about the quackery of homeopathy.
I actually know, I can't say that I'm an expert on James Randi, but I know quite a bit about him because I've looked into him quite a bit.
Oh, really? Do tell.
So he started off as a magician and later in life started the James Randi Institute, in which they basically, debunk isn't the right word, but the entire organization basically looked at fraudsters and things like that. For instance, I think the best way to describe the organization is that for the longest time they had a very large, I think it was $1 million prize, something like that, in which if anyone could prove something supernatural to them, then they could win this large cash prize. And at least based off of what I recall, I don't believe anyone actually collected on that. They would generally take palm readers, soothsayers, things like that, and view them, look at them in a more controlled environment and see if they could replicate their claims and see if they could actually prove that the supernatural was real. They actually helped with infiltrating the various establishments in the US government that were attempting to do research on psychic individuals. And they actually had people go in who were illusionists and fool the researchers into thinking that they were actually psychics and could bend spoons and things like that. I I can't personally, having not looked at the information super recently, even come close to giving the most detailed information on James Randi and his institute and things like that. But I highly suggest if any of what I just said it sounds interesting, please do look into that because he kind of popped up all over the place and would show like again, I don't think debunk is quite the right word, but he would be presented with something that was potentially otherworldly and go into it and then disprove whatever phenomenon there was.
I'll actually have to look that up after we get done with this. But in the mid 1960s, James Randi visited Father Crespi, and he stated that the treasure was, unsurprisingly, a wall-to-wall fraud. Nothing more than scraps of tin cans, brass sheets, and copper strips. One copper float for a toilet tank had text that was still visible and read, "Product of Argentina." James Randi stated that Crespi preferred pieces that proved his theory that ancient Egyptians and Babylonians had once populated South America. Crespi even stated that Hannibal himself visited Ecuador with his elephants. No, not the other Hannibal you're probably thinking of.
I think there was a president or some kind of historical state individual who's named Hannibal, and then there's the one from the books.
Right. No, I'm talking about Hannibal Barca of Carthage, the guy who took elephants and made them go over the mountains. Does he not realize that like most, if not all of the elephants died in the trip through the Alps? Like the stories say that there was only one that survived.
Oh, I thought that they went over to the mountain and then skied down and were fine because elephants are quite used to cold temperatures, originally being from Africa or parts of Asia.
Exactly, right? They should be fine. So you remember that expedition I talked about with Neil Armstrong?
Yeah, I think I remember you saying something about it during this episode.
Right. So this next clip, we talk a little bit more about that.
In 1976, Stanley Hall mounted an expedition of more than 100 people to explore Taos. Among them was American astronaut Neil Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon. Entering the cave through a jungle entrance known to the Ecuadorian army, the explorers were fascinated by what they encountered, especially large areas that appeared to have been excavated by someone or something.
The head of the British Geological Group, Dr. Brian Kelly, in 1976, he admitted that it was difficult for him to explain the actual large doorways that you see in these caves.
Really big doors is what I took away from that, and I don't know what to do with this information.
So there's actually much more to Stanley Hall than just this one trip. In his book, Taos Gold, he stated that he not only discovered Atlantis, but also wrote at length into what he called catastrophism theory, in which he described it as the missing link between evolutionism and creationism.
All right, is this the same guy that's come up in a previous episode, or are there just a bunch of weirdos obsessed with Atlantis?
I am pretty sure there's an episode of Ancient Aliens that deals exclusively with Atlantis. I'm not sure why, because it's an entirely fictional place.
You can't prove that. Citation needed.
Yes, let me go ahead and consult. Yes, let me go ahead and consult all the evidence that Atlantis exists.
Hold on, let me go on to Reddit.
Yes, the great source that is Reddit.
Let me go on to r no guys seriously, or r/no guys seriously, Atlantis is real. Trust me.
So this next clip reveals the fruitless search that Stanley Hall went on.
Although Stan Hall's expedition did find a tomb chamber with items dating to 1500 BC.
A ring! A stone ring!
The expedition found no treasure and no trace of anything that looked like the artifacts in Father Crespi's collection. But if Taos was not the secret origin of Father Crespi's amazing collection, where did it come from?
Interesting.
So you're probably asking yourself, Brandon, where did he believe the treasure came from?
Brandon, where did he think the treasure came from?
Well, in this clip, he explains, I think that's what he's trying to do.
And apparently, Petronio had visited this cave for the very first time when he was very young, when he was in his teens. He said that he had to dive underwater, go in this underwater tunnel, and then come up.
Jaramillo told Hall he wandered through chamber after chamber of ancient relics, including a vast room of books made from gold and other metals. Books with unrecognizable writing. Possibly like that on one of the metal tablets in Father Crespi's collection.
Why is gold always involved? Are we back to El Dorado? Is El Dorado in Atlantis?
I guess. I don't listen. I'm pretty sure if you got an ancient alien person down to sit down and talk to you, they would make a case that El Dorado and Atlantis are the same fucking place.
I mean, look, like I've been to plenty of cathedrals in Europe, and I can tell you historically, gold plating was real big for a while, so I can understand the whole like everything made of gold aesthetic. But I mean, like,
right. But yeah, I mean, with this whole story that Stan Hall says, I'm just going to press X to doubt on this one. So let's talk about Jaramillo for a second, who oddly enough was a major in the Ecuadorian army. Jaramillo claimed in an interview with journalist Pino Turolla, Turolla, I believe it's Turolla, that Jaramillo befriended an indigenous person named Mashutaka. I hope to God I'm pronouncing that right, who told Jaramillo about the cave and showed him where it was in 1956. However, in 2010, when he was interviewed by Eileen Hall, Stan Hall's daughter, she recounted that her father stated that Jaramillo's uncle told him where the cave was and where to enter it and where the riches could be found.
No, I totally found the thing. No, I'm not going to show you my sources of how I found this information. Just trust me. It came from information from a long line of people, men, top men.
In this next clip, we again see ancient aliens trying to connect two different cultures.
This collection is made up of what my father believed to be the formative cultures of Ecuador. This is from the coastal culture from 600 BC to 1600 AD. And this is very human-like, but at the same time some features have been exaggerated. Here you've got the smaller face with the kind of bigger ears and the elongated skull shape in the head.
The top of this head looks like an elongated cranium, an elongated skull, and it is identical to this Egyptian statue that we find all over Egypt. To see this picture right here and compare it to the Egyptian bust we see right here, it's uncanny. The head shape is identical.
Do they not understand how art works?
All right, motherfuckers. Ancient Aliens is in my court now. Time to get culturally anthropological, which probably sounded better in my head.
Ah, keep going. You're doing great.
So let's talk about skull elongation, which is a totally normal sentence that I say every day.
Can confirm. I have heard you say it every day.
So in the article, Artificial Deformation of the Human Skull, a Review, the earliest evidence of practice of intentional skull deformation is approximately 45,000 BC, based on the skulls that have been found in the Shandadar caves in Iraq. The Egyptians favored an elongated skull and pointed chin, the most famous of this kind of image being the skull of Nefertiti, which is the picture that Ancient Alien shows. The aristocracy of ancient Greece also practiced skull deformation. However, nowhere in the world was this more practiced than the Americas. And it is thought that early South American peoples practiced cranial deformation to maintain their cultural values of beauty and to facilitate tribal identity or distinction between families. So it seems that many cultures and peoples use skull deformation to distinguish themselves from other people, whether that be tribal, class, social. However, just because you have cranial deformation across time and throughout the world doesn't mean it's fucking aliens.
Just to clarify, were they talking about actual skulls or depictions in some kind of artwork?
They're talking about artistic representations of a real practice that people have done throughout time.
Right.
So in this next clip, Ancient Aliens pushes the boundaries of academia.
So this metallic library is still there in Ecuador in a subterranean cave. There are still Indian tribes living there. They are still protecting the old treasure.
So it's going to push the boundaries of academia once this cave system has been found. And whether it is Inca or extraterrestrial, it doesn't really matter at this moment in time. Let's get to this cave and see what is in there.
Perhaps Taos has yet to reveal all of its secrets. But more than 700 miles to the north, there is another cave. One that may prove that the Mayan underworld and the terrifying gods who ruled it were not only very real, but thirsty for human blood.
Oh no. Not only do we have aliens, but now we have these thirsty underworld deities. You thought Zeus was bad. You thought Zeus was bad.
So one of the notes I made for this clip is like, no one, absolutely no one mentioned the Inca except this guy. Now, mind you, the Inca are in Peru in South America, and you might notice that is not Ecuador.
I mean, technically speaking, you could probably say that Peru is not Ecuador.
So, because the show decided to whiplash us to caves 700 miles to the north, let's go ahead and explore those.
Deanda found a series of caves near the village of Tansibichen. Caves not seen for hundreds of years, and with entrances submerged beneath centuries of floodwater.
Sometimes we have to dive into these caves. Sometimes they go very deep. The average of our research is about 140, 150 feet, but we know of caves much deeper than that.
At first, Deanda and his team found carved stone heads and broken pillars with 1,900-year-old Mayan inscriptions.
We have found columns under the water. And these columns are amazing because some of them are 5 feet high and at least 10 feet wide.
But as Deanda surfaced in the dry areas of the cave, he found what he believed to be the remains of a massive underground temple complex.
Okay, so they found like columns that were very tall and very wide. So they found more underground shafts. Pretty big underground shaft.
So, from what I can tell, I tried looking for any academic article about the Tatsi Beachin Caves. My God, I'm gonna butcher that all the time. I tried finding anything about the Mayan caves that they were talking about. I did look up Guillermo de Anda, and he seems like a legitimate archaeologist. He is an actual professor of underwater archaeology, and he has 2 articles. One is about the taphonomy of human remains at the Chichen Itza cenote, which is a giant hole in the ground, and another one about his examination of Mayan civilization collapsing due to climate change. I'm sure there are no notes for us today.
Nah, not at all.
Not at all. But when I did try and look up these Mayan caves, I of course got the crackpot links that you would expect me to find, but also one called Red Ice TV, a white nationalist website. Seriously, it was like the 3rd link down.
And there it is.
So the show takes us on a journey through the Mayan mythology and the journey through the afterlife.
The Mayans themselves have a very intriguing legends of an underground world called Xibalba. And it's believed now by archaeologists that what they found is what the Mayans thought was the entrance to this legendary underground world that features prominently in the Popol Vuh.
Could this dark and mysterious cave really be the underground world mentioned in the Mayan legends? According to the Popol Vuh, the written record of Mayan mythology, the underworld kingdom of Xibalba, meaning the place of fear, was ruled by the cruel lords of the dead, who made those who entered their realm pass through a series of torture chambers involving blood, darkness, cold, knives, bats, and jaguars.
Okay, that just sounds like a Friday night. We're gonna sign up.
Exactly. Don't you and your friends go and do psychedelics and travel through the Mayan underworld to get to Xibalba and eventually Metnal?
Dude, I grew up in the Northwest. Of course we did. That was college.
So, on a more serious note, let's talk about Mayan religion real quick, because it's actually really fascinating. The Maya really did believe in a place they called Xibalba, or sometimes they called it Metnal, Metnal. This place is populated by deities with names like Bloody Tear, Flying Scab, and Bloody Claw.
I mean, I think I've heard some like thrash metal bands with similar names.
The realm itself is in perpetual darkness, with rivers of blood and pus, with the trees dead and the landscape barren.
Okay, correction. Doom metal bands with similar names.
If one can get through all 9 levels of this realm, they can reach the middle world. And 13 more levels, they reach Tomoanchan, if I'm pronouncing that right, or paradise. According to The Handbook of Life in the Mayan World by Lynn V. Foster, many Maya today believe that the soul must journey across water, and those who successfully make it to paradise can be seen on November 1st, or All Saints' Day, which is celebrated as the Day of the Dead. Now watch ancient aliens take all that interesting shit I just said and throw crap onto it.
According to the Chilam Balam book, which is the book of the jaguar priests, it says in there that at that time, the road to the stars descended from the sky, and the 13 and 9 gods came to earth. I'm sorry, road to the stars descended from the sky. Can it be more clear? I don't think so. Right there, we have a direct reference to someone that has arrived from outer space, and we have a written record about this.
Man, I've never seen Giorgio more excited.
I'm sorry. Yes, it could be more clear.
And again, I don't think I have to say it, but just in case, just because you have a story about a deity coming down from the sky doesn't mean it's aliens. Also, I can hear your cat again.
I will not apologize for the ASMR.
So, you remember me talking to you about this particular episode and how it would get really racist in a way you did not expect?
I'm sorry, we haven't gotten to that part yet?
Oh, trust me, you don't know how bad this one's gonna get. I'll just play the clip.
Here we go.
I do not believe human sacrifice was originally taught by the ETs. I believe it came in the aftermath of when the original teachers of humankind had arrived. The ancient gods, which were really just humans from another world, withdrew from the area, and the people became distraught. The more they became distraught, the more they took the original mythology and interpreted it in a much more literal way. So what might have started out as the myth about the sun dying and being reborn when it sinks below the horizon becomes literally the idea of killing people to make sure that the sun is going to come back up.
What did I just listen to? What?
Oh my god. See? You were not expecting that, were you?
Oh, there's a lot to deal with there. What was that part about extraterrestrials? What was that part about extraterrestrials were like enlightened humans that actually left the planet and then came back? What? Did I hear that correctly? Well, it sounded like what the clip was saying was like there were enlightened humans that left the planet, and then when the enlightened humans left the planet, then all of these barbaric humans started taking the legends too seriously and started murdering each other because they're barbaric like that. When they didn't have...
Yeah, and I'm sure those air quote civilized aliens were white as hell.
Well, gray is a shade of white, I suppose you could say. Don't you see? Don't you see? We have to supervise these people because look what happens, is what I got from that.
So, a bunch of colonizers came to America and said the exact same fucking thing, and they committed several genocides. So in this next clip, the show discusses the structure of the Earth.
The North Pole, a seemingly endless wasteland of Arctic ice, shrouded in darkness for 6 months of every year. Here, there is no food, no shelter, not even a cave to hide from the slashing winds and temperatures that can dive to 90 degrees below zero. But according to mainstream geology, beneath the pole and the Arctic Ocean lies the Earth's mostly rocky crust, up to 30 miles thick. Below this is molten rock, heated by the planet's spinning core, with a solid center of iron and nickel the size of the moon.
I want to address something real quick, which is that at the beginning of the episode, we were talking, or they were talking about these tunnel systems being created where humans lived underground to withstand an ice age. Am I correct? Am I remembering that correctly? And then in this last clip, they're like, "Here's the North Pole. There aren't even there aren't even underground caves to hide in from the cold."
No, you're correct.
Not the ones from the thirsty Mayan deities in the underworld.
Yeah, I'm sensing a but here. And no, not the but you're thinking of.
Okay.
Now, what if? Now, hear me out here. What if instead of flat Earth, hollow Earth?
And then journey to the center of the earth.
So they actually mentioned that book in this episode.
Oh, cool. That's where we're going.
The hollow earth theory is that this earth is not molten inside. It is actually hollow. And that suspended in the hollow of the earth is an inner sun.
Surprisingly, the notion of a hollow earth was first given scientific credence by one of the founders of modern astronomy.
The idea that the Earth might be hollow as a scientific notion dates back to the astronomer Edmund Halley, who is best known for his comet. In 1691, he presented to the London Royal Society his hypothesis that the Earth is hollow and contains several little spheres inside, sort of like those Russian Matryoshka dolls. He was hypothesizing this for a very practical reason. The Earth's magnetic pole moved a little bit every year to the west. And his idea was that our outer sphere had inner spheres that turned independently of the outer one. He also suggested that these interior spheres would also be able to support life.
Like, seriously, this is a literal plot to an Uncharted comic book that I read once. Uncharted is like Indiana Jones, the video game. So wouldn't it be embarrassing for them if they found out that Halley, of Halley's Comet fame, the guy who came up with the idea that the Earth was hollow, realized he was wrong? So this is from a Wired article that I found. If I shall seem to advance anything that looks like extravagant or romantic, he wrote in 1692, the reader is desired to suspend his censor till he has considered the force and number, the many arguments which concur to make good so new and so bold a supposition. People used to write different back then.
So fancy.
So fancy. But like, seriously, you get the point though, right? Like, he's making the long way around to say he was wrong.
That went a little bit differently than I expected, because I was thinking when you said the guy behind the Hollow Earth theory and of Halley's Comet fame, I thought we were talking about the cult leader.
Nope. Not, well, okay, so I can't... No, listen, I'm sure we are going to talk about cults in a different episode. We just haven't gotten to it yet.
I wish I could say I was looking forward to that, but...
Man, again, I'm going to tell you this. That Nazi episode is coming up depressingly too soon.
It's the History Channel. How is it not the first episode?
So in this next clip, they attempt to show that Admiral Richard E. Byrd, a Navy pilot and a Medal of Honor recipient, actually visited the Hollow Earth.
Really?
Supposedly, they have advanced technology. They've got ray guns and special weapons. And even they have flying saucers and other craft like that.
But is there any evidence that such fantastic claims could be true? And has anyone actually been to the world within our Earth? Proponents of the hollow Earth theory say yes, and that one of the explorers was no less a luminary than famed polar pioneer Admiral Richard E. Byrd. In the 1920s, Byrd made world headlines by flying over the North Pole and by becoming the first man to fly solo over the South Pole. But hollow Earth theorists believe that the famous explorer went even farther, and that on February 19, 1947, Admiral Byrd piloted a plane through a hole near the North Pole into the interior of the Earth.
He went further beyond and went explore plus ultra.
So, would it surprise you that I could not find any credible sources or websites that talked about this supposed diary that he wrote where he talked about exploring the interior of the Earth?
Brandon, we both know we're past that. We're 3 episodes in, we're already way past that.
So, so until such evidence comes forward, I'm going to assert that he did not, in fact, fly inside the Earth.
This is giving me a little bit of that feeling of people in modern day who say that they've visited heaven and talk about how there are amusement parks and there are escalators everywhere, even though everyone can fly, and famous dead people along with all of your generations of families show up for your flying test and things like that. Like, it feels kind of like that, where it's like, no, I've totally been there with no evidence supporting it.
Yeah, this is like some freaking happy science shit. So this episode gives us not one, but 2 conspiracies this time.
Oh, they're spoiling us this episode.
I know, right?
Flying saucer type craft took control of his airplane with some kind of tractor beam. And they landed them near an inner Earth city. And the message that they had for us was that they consider themselves the guardians of this planet, okay? He says, we don't approve of you people using nuclear weapons. We had just blown up a couple of cities in Japan a couple of years before. So this was the message that he was given. But when he got to Washington, they put a lid of secrecy on this, that this was not to go out.
If they're so mad about us messing up the planet, where are they now?
I know, right? Like, they should be pissed. Also, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure I don't need underground tractor beam aliens to tell me that nukes are bad. We already know nukes are bad.
Look, I'm sure that, like, time travel's slower down there or something, but, like, we kind of know. Well, most of us know. Most of us know, and then you got people like Henry Kissinger that are like, what's the point in having them if we don't use them?
I was legit about to mention Henry Kissinger.
No, just tactical nukes.
Oh, maybe you can drop some more nukes.
on all of your enemies. That's a great idea, Hank. You're such a smart guy. Hold on, I've got to throw up in my desk drawer for being so drunk. Blah.
Now let me go to the locker room.
Bring my cottage cheese and sliced pineapple to the vomitorium.
we give the people what they want. Very terrible Kissinger and Richard Nixon impressions. So we have one more clip here where they add on to the conspiracy.
Some say Admiral Byrd's own account of this flight into the hollow Earth is detailed in his secret diary, published in the 1990s, almost 4 decades after his death. But skeptics claim the diary is a forgery and point out that in February 1947, at the time Admiral Byrd was supposedly visiting this other world underneath the North Pole, he was actually part of a vast 4,700-man naval exploration called Operation High Jump, 12,000 miles away, near the South Pole. But could birds' inclusion in this large military operation at the South Pole have been merely a cover story? Some people claim it was, and this allowed him to slip away to the other end of the planet, unnoticed by the media.
Admiral Byrd, the rumor was, found a world of flying machines and people and more advanced than us, and that they helped him and then he left again. It's a myth. Nobody's really been able to prove it, but it's a great myth.
Well, in order for our theory to work, we really need him to be in the center of the Earth. So there's gotta be a way to get him from over here to over there.
I mean, there you have it, right? Like, the show admits it's a myth. The only problem is that the show has built the audience and the narrative up to this point to believe that it actually happened.
Right, it's the admission goes quietly, essentially.
Yeah, and they put it at the tail end of it, which I think if you're going to say something is a myth, you say it at the beginning, so that way it frames the conversation around that, right? You don't say it at the end where the entire conversation is framed to be like, oh, the aliens helped people build underground cities and thus the Earth itself is an underground city. Like, you know what I mean?
Right. You say at the beginning of the video that the video is sponsored. That way people understand that, the context of that part of the conversation.
Yeah. So what did we learn today? This show, again, real racist. The Earth is hollow, and aliens have tractor beams that can take us to the rave, and they have massive shafts.
All right, if I might summarize. All right, so the Spiral King with a fleet of ships went into space to go up against the Anti-Spiral, but after realizing the sheer power of the Anti-Spiral, came back to Earth, and with the help of beastmen, suppressed humans and forced them to go underground and attempted to keep them from reproducing too much, because if ever the human population reached 1 million people, then spiral power would become too great and the anti-spiral would come back in order to destroy all of humanity, which is up to the anime Gurren Lagann, which is far more internally consistent than this show is. Which is up to the anime Gurren Lagann, which is far more internally consistent than this show is.
I mean, yeah, it was at least anime consistent.
Yeah, they have a whole plot about why people went underground and lived in underground dwellings that made way more sense and was consistent throughout the show than whatever we just listened to for the last however long. At least you get to see giant robots throwing entire galaxies at each other at the end of that show.
Exactly, that was cool.
With this show, it ended with there was a secret diary that was then made not secret, so it's not a secret diary anymore, but it could have been a forgery.
So as always, you can find us on your preferred podcasting app of choice. This time, I was actually able to finally get it on Apple Podcasts.
Woo!
And I'm in the process of setting up a Twitter.
I mean, have fun with that, I guess.
So, as always, I've been Brandon.
And I have been, and until further notice, will continue to be Cody.
And whenever you deal with the alien shaft, work the shaft, not the head.
If you work the shaft, then the aliens won't rise with blue balls.
Bye!
Bye!